Hi there, everyone. We're going to start right on time today as we have a jam-packed program, which is awesome. I'm Anna Topping. I work for Tech Birmingham, and I get to work with the board of BWIT as part of my job, which is super awesome. So in a couple seconds, will pass it off to Ronnie, who is on the board and has helped coordinate this awesome program today. But wanted to give you a little bit more background. As you all know, the topic is on AI, but specifically also how it relates to responsibility and ethics as we integrate AI more and more into the work we're doing. So I'll pass it off to who's going to intro the panelists and talk a little more, but thank you all for coming. I'm really excited to learn from the insights of these three women that are so awesome to join us today.
Thank you, Anna. I couldn't be more excited to have this panel today. We are hosting this panel to talk about AI, but focusing on different aspects of it. We're going to learn a little bit about its history and evolution, as well as the impact on end users, organizations, and also development communities, and the responsibility we share in society to reap the benefits while we still need to adhere to social and ethical principles so we can mitigate risks that come with this technology. On our panel today are Angella Carlisle from Guidewire Software, Elizabeth Anderson from LunarLab, and Emily Hart from MotionMobs. I'm going to do a little bit of introduction of this three wonderful ladies, and then we'll start with questions. Just a couple of administrative items. As we go through this panel and the questions, please post your own questions in the chat. We're going to have enough time at the end to answer all of your questions. And then we'll finish up. We're talking about the next programs that Birmingham Women in Technology is going to have in the spring. And Jessica's going to talk about that and close the program. So let's get started. I'll introduce Angella Carlisle, and you can wave with your hands so everybody knows this is you. Angella has over 20 years of experience in the information security field. She began her career as a system security officer for a major healthcare benefit administrator, where she was responsible for compliance with federal information security regulations. She continued to expand her experience in the field in banking, healthcare, and insurance sectors, and currently serves as information security audit team lead for Guidewire Software. She holds multiple certifications in information security. She's also an ISSA senior member and currently serves on boards of the local Birmingham ISACA chapter and the Central Alabama Women in Cybersecurity, who is also a partner of Birmingham Women in Technology. She is an active member of Vestavia Hills Methodist Church. She earned her bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering from the University of Alabama and an MBA from UAB. Welcome, Angella, to our panel. Elizabeth Anderson, she is an accomplished tech leader currently serving as the CEO and co-founder of LunarLab. It is a UX design and product strategy firm based in Birmingham, Alabama. The company helps businesses create innovative, inclusive, ethical, and profitable digital products. Elizabeth's background is in product strategy, project management, and leadership. With over a decade of experience in the tech industry, she has built and supported a wide range of software products, including mobile, web, AI, SaaS, IoT, or on-premise across many industries like fintech, e-commerce, education, social media, nonprofits, sports logistics, and more. She is known for her ability to solve big problems, improve operational efficiency, balance creativity with practicality, and craft exceptional user experience. I also want to add that Elizabeth joined the Birmingham Women in Technology board this year. She is an advisor for the board. And finally, Emily Hart. Emily started in communication in 2007 in nonprofits and moved to the technology sector in 2010. Her work has been published in national magazines, mass media-owned websites, and local and niche publications. Her 4 year with Apple included public speaking, event planning, technical instructions and troubleshooting, and global retail marketing strategy at the company's corporate headquarters in California. Emily has led MotionMobs product development since she created the company's consulting division in 2015. With a background in journalism, marketing, and technical education, she serves as liaison between MotionMobs' technical team and the client, overseeing the development strategy and multitude of projects. She coaches entrepreneurs through Innovation Depot, Prosper, and ETPA's Alabama's Launchpad program. She also sits on the advisory board of South Point Bank and the Samford University Journalism and Mass Communication Advisory Council, and she is a member of the CMO Institute class of 2020. Welcome, ladies. So excited to have you here. And we're just going to start with the questions and let you share your thoughts. So starting with question number one, a big question. So AI has dominated news headlines recently, from CEOs testifying before Congress to celebrity lawsuits about the fair use of AI. How has AI played a role in history, and what makes it right now newsworthy? We can start with Emily.
Of course, I'm happy to jump in first. So, AI is something that has really fascinated humanity for as long as we can go back. If you think back even to ancient Greeks, ancient Romans, they were fascinated by the idea of machines that could imitate life. We've got stories of Plato and Da Vinci themselves being involved in the creation of automatons that would imitate life through mechanical movements. And that just kind of created this snowball effect that moved through history. Looking back to the 1950s was when computers finally became capable of being able to store commands to run later. This is when Alan Turing published his article of the imitation game. And this is when scientists and mathematicians all kind of realized, ooh, the idea of artificial intelligence is actually possible now. And it really changed the outlook as to how computers and humans would interact with each other. Believe it or not, the first chat bot was actually developed in the 1960s. It was called Eliza. It was built at MIT, and it was trained based on a psychotherapist's responses to humans. And even in the 1960s, people who interacted with Eliza would share stories about how disconcerting it was that she felt so human. But if you think about compared to now, of course, she was very basic. In the 1990s, this is when IBM's Deep Blue AI program beat the reigning world chess master for the first time. This is when Dragon Dictation released their first version of their application for Windows. In the early 2000s, Roombas began navigating our homes using AI for the first time. And in 2010, IBM's Watson beat Ken Jennings in Jeopardy. When you think about the historical use of AI, it's actually been around and it's been prolific for decades. I mean, more than 50 years. If we think back to 2011, this is when Siri first came out on our iPhones. And what we're seeing today, this release of ChatGPT and our ability to integrate with it and add these natural language processing tools to pieces of software, this becomes incredibly newsworthy because it's the newest and latest thing. You know, our perception of what AI is doing today is always going to be through the perspective of what we've known up to this point. So in the same way that Eliza was groundbreaking in the 60s, ChatGPT is groundbreaking today because technology has continued to move forward. One of the things that I find most interesting about where we are today is what I call the productization of AI, where tools like these chatbots are really putting AI in the hands of normal people, not developers, not a very limited access through an existing piece of software. And it's really opening our eyes to the potential of AI and how it relates to us.
Wow. Uh, that was a good check of history. I didn't really realize that it started that early. Angela, how would you answer to that question?
Well, I'm very restricted in my AI usage. I'm really from the security and privacy and compliance perspective. But AI is really not anything new, I guess, in the cybersecurity world, because for years machine learning has been used to detect threats, malicious files, emails, websites. That component of AI has been in use in the cybersecurity world for quite a while, and has been delivering value for quite a while for a lot of cybersecurity professionals using the various tools, for analyzing threats, finding threats, and those kinds of things. But still, I think there's room for improvement, because with all of the things that those types of tools do, there's still a lot of noise associated with those systems. There's a lot of false positives and things like that, and false negatives for that matter, that a human still has to look at and still has to analyze. So there's still that human component of it as well. So there's plenty of room for improvement in that. But that's where I kind of see AI, being used the most in cybersecurity, or is through that analytical, predictive analytical approach.
And Elizabeth, also answering for this just questions, are there any ethical red flags that we need to consider here?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So AI is in the news so much right now, and I feel like we're at this really big tipping point at the moment. So a lot of what people might be hearing right now is that, AI could be taking over people's jobs, or even that it could become sentient or things like that. And those are not the things that keep me up at night, right? What worries me so much about AI right now is the harm that it can do in the world, and how many people are actively right now today being harmed by it. So bias in AI has huge implications for people's lives. And it's not just hypothetical, like this is not a maybe thing. This is something that's really happening right now. So going back to some of the news articles we talked about, one of the ways that's playing out so much is in the hiring space. So there are tons of AI products on the market right now that are promising these companies that they can help them hire faster and increase their retention, and keep better employees on board. But unfortunately, a lot of those products are being created on really biased data. So let's say there's a company out there where only white men have been offered a particular role over the years for just various reasons. So maybe early on, white men were the only ones allowed to hold that role because of segregation or sexism at work, or maybe a certain degree was required, but college administrators were discriminatory, or maybe people who didn't match that demographic group had been pushed out over the years, or maybe hiring managers were discriminatory. So whatever the case, in that example, the AI model is being trained on the only data that it has, and the only data that it has says that white men have historically been the only ones offered for the job. So if they post a job and they put this AI hiring tool on top of in charge of hiring for this job, what do you think is going to happen if a Black woman applies for the job? Well, the AI is not going to recommend her for that job, right? Because it is only using the data that it has to go on. And that is really, really common in those types of products, because the past hiring data that is being used to train the model is often really biased. And it's a real problem in hiring. So to, pinpoint a couple of those news articles, the EEOC just launched an initiative in 2021 to make sure that companies using AI comply with anti-discrimination laws. Last year, they settled a case involving a company's discriminatory hiring practices using AI, and I'm expecting to see a lot more of those going forward. Another way it's coming out is in predictive policing and loans. So we're working on these hundreds and hundreds of years of human history that have all of this racism and sexism and classism and homophobia and these other ways that humans really hurt each other. And when we build AI models on top of those biased, data sets to decide like who can get a loan, we have to be really clear in our knowledge that the existing data sets are full of racist lending policies. So just throwing that data into a model without considering those things is going to just perpetuate those problems at best and exacerbate them at worst. So back to the news, the Federal Reserve last year started working on supervisory efforts to prevent AI-based discrimination in lending, and I expect to see more of those. One last example on this. In December last year, the FTC banned Rite Aid from using AI facial recognition technology for 5 years after they were found to be using a system that incorrectly tagged women and people of color as shoplifters. So the FTC is charged that they failed to implement security program. They didn't safeguard consumer data. They were using poor data to begin with. They were using these grainy photos from newspaper articles or employee cell phones to make these matches. And to Emily's point, this is not like a new thing. They weren't just doing this last year. They have been doing this since 2010. So they have been doing that for over 10 years, over a decade. And any of us could be wrapped up in that. Like any one of us could be accused of a crime that we didn't commit based on false data in these poorly created, insecure, biased AI systems. So on the other side, AI is not just harmful for, these algorithmic outcomes that we were talking about. There's also a number of companies that are exploiting workers in other countries to train their models. So in practice, that looks a lot like forcing low-paid, overworked people, a lot of them minors, to review hundreds of really disturbing, violent images to train the model on what's inappropriate. And they're just getting paid pennies, and they can end up with PTSD or serious emotional harm from the work they're being tasked with. So these are just some of the kind of bad outcomes that we're seeing right now with these AI systems. And in my job as a consultant, I take all of that really seriously. And I don't want anybody to hear me and think that I'm saying I'm anti-AI or anti-innovation, because I am very far from it. I just think that we should use our really powerful skills of innovation and creativity to build systems that mitigate those harms and actually do some good in the world. So, back to the original question, how do we expect this to go forward? What makes it newsworthy right now? I would say the biggest thing is that we're at this turning point right now, and we have this opportunity that we can choose a path where we can improve society with this new technology, and it's just a huge light bulb moment for us.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. There's a lot of benefits to reap with this, but there's a lot of responsibility in making the decisions on how to implement it correctly. I want to jump into just a little bit of understanding what all the lingo around AI. So there's so many AI buzzwords in the larger conversations. We're talking about generative AI, predictive AI, machine learning, ChatGPT, and even large language models. What's the difference between all of those things? We can start with you, Emily.
Sure. Buzzwords are, they're full. Every news article I read, it's like we're using each one of these terms interchangeably. And I think it's really important, as we're talking about the responsibility that we as business owners and consultants have in the space, we need to understand what we're talking about. And so one of the most basic things is the difference between generative AI and predictive AI. So generative AI is that production of new content based on a prompt. So for example, ChatGPT is an example of generative AI. A lot of these tools are being used for things like creating social media posts. Think of this as kind of like your entry level, I don't know how to use AI, but I know how to ask a machine to do something for me. Predictive AI is going to be much more on the data processing side, where we are using programs to analyze very, very large data sets that are difficult for humans to sift through and really extract those trends and make informed decisions for businesses based on the data sets that they have. Machine learning is another one of those terms that is sometimes used interchangeably with AI, but it's something different. Machine learning really refers to the process of training a program on a particular data set to perform in a certain way. Those large language models are algorithms, they're deep learning to train a system to perform through natural language. So actually interact with it through sentences in the way that we talk, rather than being a developer and having to send commands to it. ChatGPT is an example of natural language processing through a large language model. And so we've got these layers of products, we have these layers of training, and then we have these layers of production of content. And at the end of the day, the truth is they are all susceptible to the same garbage in, garbage out problem. And so regardless of which buzzword we're talking about, we all have to be super aware of the fact that just because we've referenced one thing doesn't actually mean that we've picked the right target or we've asked it to do the right thing. That's a much larger conversation. I will pause here and let my fellow panelists chime in on that as well. And I know that we'll circle back to that with some questions later in this as well.
Okay. Angela, from your perspective.
Yeah, from my perspective, I don't know that these AI buzzwords are all that new in the security perspective. Things like data privacy, encryption, user access controls, logging, monitoring, risk mitigation, those aren't new in the security field. The biggest thing that you hear security folks say is the need to be proactive, and AI can help make that better, because if any of you have worked in the security space for a long time, like I have, we've spent most of our time being reactive to things that are happening. So proactive, I guess, would be a word to take to heart and move forward with that. And I guess the biggest thing that I would see as AI models and processes and systems are implemented in your companies is now more than ever, security needs to be, and I know I'm probably preaching to the choir for a lot of security people on the call, but security needs to be brought in from the beginning. Security professionals preach that all the time. And I think it's more important now than ever to bring security in as you're developing your AI models and your AI systems, because those same basic foundational security practices and privacy practices that you should already be doing at your companies, like encryption, user access controls, privacy, consent, privacy policies, security policies, all those things are foundational as we expand into the AI world. So if you're not doing those things already, you've probably got bigger issues. But really, I would say there's nothing really new under the sun related to AI and security. But it's even more important for security professionals to be vigilant of the things, of the power, that AI systems have, and again, just kind of expanding that attack surface that we all try to protect each day. It's just a new thing. So there is, like I say, there's really nothing new, but I think it's just that vigilance, that responsiveness needs to increase from a security and compliance and privacy perspective.
And I think a point that you're really focusing on here is in compliance and security and governance. This technology need to be governed, right, and need to be audited, just like anything else.
Absolutely.
We don't just let it loose.
Absolutely. Well,
So,
there, and as I was kind of putting together my thoughts, to me, AI kind of plays a dual role in security and privacy. One, AI can be a tool for security and privacy functions and compliance functions. It can, be that predictive analysis that you need for threat intelligence. It can, maybe do even horizon scanning to see what new regulations are out there that you potentially would need to comply with. It could compare regulations to your current policies to see if your policies need to be updated. So that's some use cases for using AI to accomplish security and privacy. But the flip side of that is also AI itself for the enterprise needs compliance controls around it. It needs to be documented. It needs to be continuously monitored and evaluated for those risks, for those weaknesses. So your risk management component of your company needs to be involved with that. You need an AI leader, or at least an AI think tank, if you will, inside of your company that encompasses people, the CISO, or anyone from security for that matter, your legal, your privacy, your data experts, your data scientists, as Elizabeth referred to, as far as, making sure that the training of the model is fair and unbiased and transparent. So it's going to take the entire operation, to ensure that the compliance of the model of your system is there, and that it's also done with security in mind and with privacy in mind.
Thank you, Angela. And Elizabeth, just looking at all the marketing hype and the fluff around what AI really means. What are your thoughts?
Oh yeah. So Emily and Angela did such a great job on that more technological side, but the marketing fluff is really what I wanted to talk about here. So the thing that really strikes me when we're talking about AI is just how much marketing kind of seeps into these conversations. Because even when we are using the term artificial intelligence, it's really a misnomer. It's not intelligent, right? It doesn't have reasoning abilities. And the hype machine will have you believe in that all of these things can think independently and behave like humans, and they can reason independently. And that is not true at all. That is hype. So they're just following, these systems are just following the rules that humans coded into them, and they are working within the scope of what they have been coded to do. So they're really limited by the data set that they're using, by the rules that have been coded into them, by the biases that we have, like we talked about earlier. And the tools they're really just that, right? They're tools that we can use. They cannot replace humans right now. They are going to all need human oversight. Please, please, please have human oversight of these systems. But a lot of times what you're hearing is these tools are getting marketed in such a way that it's really kind of unclear what's going on. And to go back to what Emily said, there are all of these different terminologies, and they can be so overwhelming and confusing. There are just so many of them, and companies are throwing around these terms like artificial intelligence, but what they're really talking about is something more like a large language model, and they're just really they're kind of overlapping with each other. So as y'all are hearing about all of these different things, and as you're learning about these, I would just caution everyone to sort of look out for times when what seems to be a technical conversation is actually a marketing pitch. So just a word of warning as we're talking about it, because they do sort of overlap, right?
Thank you. As the technology landscape is changing, why should companies and individuals care about creating and using AI products responsibly? And I'll start with Angela.
2 words: data breach. That's why they should care about using AI securely and properly. Still, I mean, there are massive amounts of data that go into these models, to train them. And again, the bias, the ethical piece of it is the bias of the information, but also it needs to be masked, or it needs to be scrubbed, so that you aren't exposing exposing personal information or sensitive information, be it information of your customers or your customers' customers, in the case with my company, or even sensitive company proprietary information like intellectual property and stuff like that. So again, that's it in a nutshell. Is they should care because of the potential, again, that expanded attack surface, and the potential for massive amounts of data to be exposed if it's not done properly and securely.
And Elizabeth, what we should care about using products responsibly. How can we get ourselves in trouble?
Yeah, I was going to say, it is not always the most fun thing in the world to talk about ethics, right? Because we can have some really conversations about it. I talk about it a lot in my job, and sometimes people are not like really jazzed to start their day with an ethics conversation. But if we want to be really innovative, we have to get really serious about it, right? Because the best innovation isn't just about creating something new, it's about creating something new that lifts everybody up and not just a select few people. So why should you care? First of all, your company can get into legal trouble if you are not careful. Like Angela mentioned, you could have data breaches, but also regulations are coming and lawsuits are happening right now that can impact the law and how we create these products. And I am not a lawyer, I do know that companies are currently getting sued for harmful AI products, and we touched on some of those earlier, but at a minimum, I would say that companies need to understand the industry's legal rules. Second, unethical and irresponsible products can really erode a lot of trust from your stakeholders and customers. So even the really advanced AI models have a certain level of unpredictability to them. A lot of those systems are producing totally inaccurate or made up information. I think a lot of us have seen that recent news story about that lawyer who used ChatGPT to come up with case laws, and it ended up presenting totally fake cases. I think he's getting sanctioned by the judges. Is horrible. So obviously using these unchecked, completely made up information made everybody in the courtroom distrust the guy, but also having such widely reported story did not exactly improve ChatGPT's reputation for accuracy either. So related note, if you are not disclosing how the models are trained or how AI is being used, your customers are not going to trust you when they find out, and they will find out. It's such a new technology. Consumers are already worried about it. If they found out that you haven't been honest, they're not going to trust you again. And then at the end of the day, finally, I just want to wrap up this one saying you should care about ethics in these products because it's the right thing to do, right? History is totally full of examples of people who have been using new science and new technology without any ethical considerations. It has created a lot of really disastrous things. A lot of us saw Oppenheimer, right? It just came out. Things got a little hairy ethically there for Oppenheimer. And I think AI is very similar, right? It's this really powerful tool, but if we do not have ethical oversight and if we're not paying attention to what we're doing with it and making sure that it's being used for good, it can also be a dangerous weapon.
And Emily, you also have a background in journalism, so you probably have some tips and insight about copyrights or plagiarism.
I do. I have some opinions here. So before I got into tech, I was a writer, and without my consent, but here we are, ChatGPT ingested a ton of content with my byline on it. And there's nothing that I can do about that after the fact. It's in there. I can ask ChatGPT to write about a topic under my byline that I've never written about, and it will do it, and it sounds exactly like me. It's terrifying. But that aside, it motivates me as a small business owner. And I assume most of y'all who are on the call today come from small businesses. It's so important, like both what Angela and Elizabeth were saying, we need to be proactive. Regulation is coming. There are things that we, the small business owners, need to raise our voices about to make sure that the policies that are being written are fair and responsible. If we just sit back and keep our mouths shut and wait for, giant case law to come down because a tech giant abused their power, we're going to be the ones who bear the brunt of it because some kind of rule is going to come out that is excessively burdensome for small businesses to comply with. We don't want that to happen. We want to make sure that we're advocating for innovation responsibly and, interacting with our legislators to be able to say, this is what we as a technology company commit to do. This is how we want to interact with these technology tools. And here's how we want to make the world a better place. Like Elizabeth was saying, this is not the time to sit back and wait for something to blow up and then respond to it. And so I really just encourage all of you on this call to pay attention to the legislation that's being drafted, call your lawmakers and make sure that they hear your perspectives as a small business so that we're not lost in the noise.
That's a very good advice. And by the way, we are going to share, or the panel is going to share some tips and some resources you can use to research further. And of course, you can always reach out to them for additional insights. Just wanted to mention that. Between SaaS products available online with just a login and baked-in plugins through enterprise software, it feels like we're being sold the idea that AI implements itself. Does AI replace the need for developers if your business is not selling software?
No. AI does not replace humans, like Elizabeth was saying. AI needs so much oversight. It is honestly, it's kind of dumb. It's really not that smart. It only does what it's programmed to do. And anybody who claims that, well, because of AI, I don't need these roles in my company anymore, or I can just sign up for this product and I can eliminate this division, they're incredibly misled. And it's important for everyone to understand that in order to actually implement AI, you need technical experts. You need developers. You need people in information security. You need people on the ethical side advocating for the correct way to do it. This is a very complex process, and you have to make sure that you bring all of the right people to the table. You know, ChatGPT, yes, can write code, but the only thing that it does is allow you to write code that's basically been written before. It was trained on, Stack Overflow. It won't produce proprietary code or productive pieces of AI for your business. And so you absolutely need to make sure that you've brought all of the right experts to the table who can then use AI to become more effective at their jobs, but it does not replace any of those seats at the table.
If anything, it looks like it creates more opportunities for different career paths for
Yeah, I would
the
add,
intelligent people. Yeah.
right, exactly. I agree wholeheartedly with what Emily said. I would go so far as to say, from a security perspective, if you're going to purchase AI products, your third-party vendor assessment program is more important than ever. Just because Emily, I'm preaching to the choir over there, Emily. It's even more important for your company to vet that vendor very carefully and very thoroughly, because again, all of this is so new. And as I said before, a third-party vendor assessment for information security is nothing new. That process is nothing new. So again, it's just, expanding your tool set of security tools to include AI in that, and vetting those vendors, looking at what they do top to bottom from a security perspective, their development, how do they do the development, as well is key to making sure that you don't introduce any vulnerabilities or issues that they may have into your environment.
Elizabeth, what's your perspective with this, especially trusting third party?
All right. So on the question of does AI replace the need for developers, I have a little bit of a tangent here, and I just want to say one thing. Everybody pay attention. Do not put your company code into any AI product that you don't own. Don't do it. If you ignore every other word that I said on this call today, please, please, please hear me when I say this. Under absolutely no circumstances should you ever put your company code into ChatGPT or any other online product. Do not do it. Never, ever, ever. Because here's the thing. If you work at a company and you're writing code, you do not own that code. Your company owns that code. And if you put that AI into an AI system your company doesn't own, you just committed an IP violation. And if you're subject to an NDA, you also just committed an NDA violation. You could be fired, you could be sued, and not to mention the potential leaks. Like Angela said, the security and compliance is not there. Okay. You do not want to be the reason why competitors or hackers got a hold of your company's code. So don't be that reason, right? And you might say, oh, but what about just a little bit of no, do not even put a semicolon in there. Like, resist the temptation, please. I am begging you. And I think it goes to without saying that it also applies to proprietary data. Anything that you're dealing with, not even just code, whether it's, written documentation or anything else that's proprietary, don't put it in there. And back to that original question, does it replace developers? No, because it's got to have human oversight to function. Human oversight means that you need somebody with some expertise to review the output for accuracy. So even if you're generating code out of these things, you need somebody who knows what they're looking at, right? Do not throw ChatGPT generated code into your production app and hope for the best, because if you're not a developer, you don't know. It could be really buggy, maybe, or it could also be like wildly insecure, and you're not going to know that until you just sling it in production. You don't want to find out at that point. So I'll just wrap it up and say, not to put too fine a point on it, do not put your company code into an AI product that you don't own. I beg you. That is all.
That's a very good a good point that you made. What would go in a checklist if a business is considering adopting AI? How should they go about doing this the right way? Emily, do you want to start?
I'm happy to start. So I see a lot of similarities as to how businesses are approaching implementing AI to kind of when the App Store first came out, where there was a lot of buzz and hype through the business community around, well, I don't have an app. We should have an app. And you ask them, well, what do you need an app for? And they go, I don't know. We just don't have one. And I'm seeing a lot of businesses do the exact same thing with AI now, where they say, we should have AI. And you ask them, well, what should it do? And they go, I don't know. We should just have AI. And so as a result, I think your checklist should always start with, no, you need to define a problem. What problem is your business experiencing? What is the solution to that problem? And only if that solution is executed through AI should you even build the rest of the checklist out. You don't need to even consider how do we implement this product until you know you have a definite, tangible reason to go through an AI implementation. And so when you're looking through those problems and trying to figure out, is AI the right fit for my business? I would encourage you all to look for things like, are there simple but tedious tasks that your employees waste time doing over and over again? Are there process points where mistakes happen that end up costing huge amounts of time or money in order to fix them? Are there massive amounts of text or data that's hard for humans to sift through? Or are you looking for trends or patterns that might explain customer behavior or growth opportunities? Things like that. If you're experiencing problems from a list like that, you could be a really good candidate for looking for an AI implementation. And just like we were saying earlier about how it doesn't remove these seats from the table, the next step on the checklist is to make sure that you get all of those stakeholders at the table, because they're going to help you figure out what needs does your business have that maybe another business doesn't have, and how do we relate this AI solution to you specifically? How do we find a realistic timeline? How do we set expectations around how we're going to train the model? How do we set expectations about refining it and user adoption? All of those things are going to be unique to your business. There's not just a standard game plan of it should take this long, we're going to do it this particular way, and then it's going to be successful. So I'll turn it over now to both Angela and Elizabeth to speak more toward how do you determine what are your security and privacy requirements? How do you evaluate the ethical and moral side of your own implementation?
I'll let Angela get into more of the security stuff, but I wanted to mention here that my company, LunarLab, has a responsible AI use policy, and I would definitely recommend that any company who is using AI in any capacity adopt something similar, right? You don't have to do it just like we do, but having a policy like that helps everybody on the team agree on company-wide approach to things. You know, we all understand how we all feel about AI. It gets us talking about potential harms so we can mitigate them. So there are 6 different steps to our policy that I wanted to share, and it might be able to help you. So first one is transparency. We're always transparent in every circumstance about how or why AI is used, how we maintain human oversight, what data and prompts were used, and any potential risk associated to AI. That might sound like overkill, and for some people it is, but it's also really helpful to just let people understand exactly how we are using these things so that everybody can be involved in the conversation of, does this need to change in any way? Was that the right approach to use? Second one is data privacy. We never, ever use customer, company, or any other proprietary data in any AI system. We just don't do it. You know, that is just a huge, data privacy is so important. And I know that these models are training their data based on what you put in there. And we don't want to be part of that for, you know, any kind of proprietary data. So data privacy is number 2. Number 3 is human oversight, which I know I've touched on several times here, but we always want to make sure that we're ensuring that humans have comprehensive, intentional oversight anytime that AI is used, because we're the experts, right? These AI tools, ChatGPT, They are not experts, but we are experts. So we should be making sure that any of the output meets our standards, right? Fourth is human voices first. We never ever use AI to substitute or replace human voices or insights. Validation, user testing, any types of user research are always conducted on real humans rather than any kind of AI generated persona, because it's not a real person, right? It's not going to have the perspectives of a real person. We talked about earlier how these systems, they can't act like humans. They don't have human intelligence. They don't have human reasoning. It's just a pile of code, right? So we can't ask it questions that we would ask a human and expect a human response. So any kind of research validation needs to be done with real humans, and any AI use that we have should center the needs of real humans. So always humans and human voices first. Fifth is ethical use. We only use AI systems for purposes that we feel are ethical, that we feel align with our values, that align with the values of our clients. We would never use AI to manipulate or deceive people or in any other way that could cause harm. And we also really try to consider the broader social impact that AI use can have anytime we're having those conversations. That is difficult. It's hard to go into those conversations because the instinct is always, when you're building something new and you ask yourself, how could this harm people? The instinct is to say, oh, it couldn't. But there are a lot of unintended consequences to things. So always, 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 anytime you're building anything or you're using anything, ask yourself how it can impact people in the immediate sense, but also in the broader societal sense. If this gets successful, or if this, gets big down the road, how is it going to impact, these huge, the economy, right? Like, how is it going to impact poverty, things like that. So ethical use is hugely important. And then number 6, our last one, is regular review, right? We work with our employees. We want to make sure that we identify any areas of improvement. We're constantly talking about this. We're implementing changes as needed. We review this policy itself on an annual basis and make sure that it remains current and effective. And then, kind of to Angela's point earlier, if you're using AI, you need to make sure that it's staying up to date. Like, bias can creep in at any time. Even if you start with a system that has very limited bias, I would never say no bias, because everything has bias. But even if you start with a model with very limited bias, it can really creep in very easily. So that constant regular review is very, very important. So, those are the 6 kind of key areas that I would recommend for any responsible AI use policy.
Thank you. And I want to leave some time for the audience to ask some questions. So Angela, quickly, if you have anything to add to this, and what some resources people can look into.
Yes, just Emily and Elizabeth covered all of that wonderfully, but just I know I talked a little bit about basic security practices, the basic blocking and tackling that you need to be doing anyway, but just a few more that I thought of that are key for implementing anything new like AI would be, security measures such as encryption of the data, access controls. We hear all the time, access is based on minimum necessary and business need to know. But just because that's been around a long time doesn't mean it's any less important. Conduct vulnerability assessments, pen testing. Is also crucial for if you purchase, especially if you purchase an AI solution, or if you are having your own homegrown one. Educate your employees, security awareness. Again, been around forever, but not any less important. Add AI content, AI specific content to your awareness training, so that your employees are hearing those buzzwords and understanding what that's about, and what to do, if they suspect something may be going awry with something related to AI. And again, in your incident response plan. Lastly, but certainly not least, your incident response plan needs to be tested to account for an AI scenario. If there is a problem with your AI system, test that out. See what, if it's a data breach, is it related to AI? Put that in your test plan and use that as part of one of your scenarios. But again, and be looking for people when you're hiring these new security analysts. Look for those that may have some AI experience as well. That human oversight, as Elizabeth referred to, is not going away. It can't go away. And your new wave of folks that you're bringing in and hiring are going to need to be up to date on those AI skills as well.
Yes, and I actually saw in the chat some of the QA experts, members of Birmingham Women in Technology noted here that you need to QA it and you need to audit it and you need to keep testing and testing and testing. Even though you put in production, you think it's good to go, you still have to check on it to see that it's still doing what it needs to be doing. Great answers to those questions. And I'm going to open up for the members to send their questions through the chat. So you can just type in your question here and we'll try to answer as many as we can. And I don't know if I'm getting any chats. Anybody else, any questions? I don't see anything coming through yet. No questions. Okay. That's great. That means you covered everything that everybody had a question on. This is how good you did.
We're just scratching the surface. I mean, we are just barely there.
I think, well, somebody I think said something. Can you please share the list of tips? Yeah, that will be great. And we can send it also in our follow-up email.
I created a slide, when we were first initially doing a slideshow with all my references, so I can send that over to Anna and we can publish that. It's just really links to all the articles and checklists and things like that that I used in preparing for this. So if that's something that would be helpful, I'm happy to do that.
That would be wonderful. So thank you very much for participating in this panel, and your insight was just invaluable. It was just amazing. So I'm going to turn it over to Jessica to talk to us about what's coming up with Birmingham Women in Technology. And thank you everybody for attending today. Jessica, take it away.
Hi there. I've noticed that we have a couple of questions that just came in, Ronit. First one would be, how would you describe AI to people who do not know what it means? Would someone like to take a stab at that?
Yeah, Jessica, that was my question. I was just thinking how, people, will ask you, what is AI? We hear AI all the time. So what's a dummy description, I guess you could say. Not a dummy, but you know what I mean?
Such a philosophical question. It's funny. If I was to break it down to its most essential elements, when I think about AI, it's really not too different than a lot of the computing that we do, right? So even going back to very basic things like a calculator, where we are putting in calculations and we're expecting a calculator to spit out a response, the way that it does that is that it's been programmed to understand, what the inputs are and what needs to come out of it. And I think that AI is at its most core of what it is. I don't think that it's too dissimilar than that. You're creating a system, you are giving it, you're giving it kind of a scope of what it needs to do. You're inputting data into it, and you're asking it to aggregate that data and spit out a response to the best of its ability. Now, with the things like large language models, I like to think of those as like word math, right? So a lot of these are just looking at the statistical probability of what the next word in that string of words might be. So, at its most core, would say that it is not dissimilar from what we have always done with computers, which is to say we put stuff in and we expect it to give us stuff back based on a set of parameters. That may be simplifying it a little bit too much, but I went hard when I heard as basic as possible. I bet Angela and Emily have maybe different viewpoints on that.
I would say the exact same thing. I mean, AI is at its core the idea that a computer produces a response that is in alignment with the way that a human would respond to the same inquiry. And so whether it's math, whether it's language, whenever the program tells you the same thing, then it, as if you had asked somebody standing next to you, we consider that AI. And yes, there are varying levels of it, but at its root, that's really all it is. It's just programming and a response.
That helps because we put out a new, I hate to say the new buzzword, and then people just in coverage, or what does that really mean? And it's like, well, it's what we're gonna call it today. Not totally, but y'all know what I mean.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. We will share the recording link and any additional resources in a follow-up email for those who ask. All right, Jessica.
Wonderful. Our next event is going to be on February the 12th. We're going to do this in honor of Valentine's Day. So we're going to go just a day early on that Monday. It will be in Hoover at the Pleasure is All Wine. And we're going to throw in a little twist on AI with the AI and wine pairing. And we're going to do some wine tasting as well as some chocolates. And we're going to have chocolates from Elizabeth Moore. She's a new chocolatier that's opened in Pelham. So we're hoping that all of you can join us. We're asking for RSVPs to be in no later than February the 7th, because we're going to need to give some lead time on the chocolates that we're having created for the event. Looking forward to everyone attending and the other events that we'll have for you later this spring.
Great. And just to mention, we open up this year a mentoring program in collaboration with Momentum Leaders. So just a reminder, if you're looking for a mentor, sign up. If you are looking to be a mentor, please sign up. We would love to have you helping us with this effort. Thank you very much. And you all have a very good week and stay warm.
Thank you to our panelists. Y'all were wonderful.